Global military expenditure grew by 7% in 2023, the steepest rise since 2009, according to a Swedish think tank report. India is the fourth highest spender on military. China's defense spending is three times of India. Is the government spending enough? As all this also depends on the GDP of the country. Diplomatically, we have ensured that we do not go to war. However, only having the kind of capabilities US, China, or Russia has can deter our enemies. What are your thoughts on this? Prior to that, is the government spending enough to build these capabilities, and how can the government help Indian private sector?
Well, I think I partly answered that question earlier when I said that if you want peace, prepare for war.
Right.
Now, when you have to prepare for war, the security of a country is the prime responsibility of government. That cannot be outsourced. When you can outsource everything else, but you can't outsource the defense of your country. So, when it comes to expenditure on defense, after you have budget and you have even business, you have EBITDA. So the first thing you do is interest. So the government also has to clear its debts first. But once that is done, then the next first charge, the first expenditure, which is the priority and the responsibility of government, is defense. There is no getting away from that. But how much to spend on defense will, of course, then again depend on a multitude of factors, including the threats which are there, the likelihood of those threats manifesting, and that has to be balanced against the other requirements of health, infrastructure, schools, colleges, hospital, and this debate of the guns versus butter, defense versus development. This is an age-old debate. How much to be spent on defense against more pressing requirements? And you would agree that India is still a poor country. We still have a long way to go to match up with the developed world. If you see the various human development indices, whether it is healthcare, whether it is deaths during childbirth, universal education, etc., etc., we are still, in the, I would say, halfway mark only. So we have a long way to go. And therefore, we have to be able to balance out how much to spend on defense and how much to spend on development. And that is a very difficult decision, and that is for the government of the day to decide.
Yes, it is a tricky balance.
It is a tricky balance. So,
how close were the Indian armed forces to escalate the post Pulwama security situation, which developed after the Pulwama attack?
I think after Pulwama, we did the Balakot strikes. So it's not that we did not respond. So the Balakot strikes were as a result of the terrorist strike at Pulwama, and that was a very well thought out operation. There are conflicting reports on how many casualties took place and etc. etc. But that is not important. What is important that it showed the country's resolve to retaliate and not take things lying down. That is the major takeaway from the Balakot strikes. Not only the Balakot strikes, earlier the surgical strikes which were carried out after the Uri attacks, the surgical strikes which were carried out on the India-Myanmar border after insurgent terrorist attacks on Indian army troops in Nagaland and Manipur. So all those showed a resolve to take retaliatory action if we are provoked. So that is the important part. But at the same time, the retaliatory action is justified, is proportionate to the initial attack which has taken place. And that is acceptable in international law, by the way. So it is not that we violated any laws or anything like that. So it showed that we will not take things lying down. That is the major lesson learned. And because this retaliatory action is proportionate, it keeps the level down. Because the retaliatory action should not further lead into a spiral which escalates or finally reaches into a full blown out conflict or war. And I think if I were to draw a parallel, the Israeli reaction to the terrorist strikes by the Hamas have actually become a full-fledged war, which has drawn the entire region into conflict. So maybe a degree of proportionality had it been exercised, rather than going in with that sense of retribution, then there also the tempers could have been kept a little lower. But main lesson, as I said, out of these 3 strikes that we carried out, that India is willing to take the battle to the enemy.